Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are solving transformed array. So we will be given an integer array nums that will represent a circular array, and our task is to create a new array result of the same size, and it has to follow these rules. So at each index, if the nums of that index is greater than 0, then we will start at that index and move that number to the right, and then we will set the result of that index to a number at that index of nums. And if it's less than 0, then we will move to the left and do the same thing for result. And if nums of I is equal to 0, then we will set the result of index to nums of index. And finally, we want to return the resulting array. So if we look at this example, first we see that it's 3, so we move 3 to the right. So we set this place to 1, move 2 to the left, 1, and then 2. Since it's a circular array, we can circle back to here. So it will be 1. We set this to 1, move 1 to the right, the value is 1, move 1 to the right, we can circle to here. So the value will be 3, and we return this as our result. For this example, move 1 to the left, so -1 here, move 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's -1, move 1 to the left is 4, so we set this to 4, and we return this as our result. So now that we have seen some examples, let's get to how we can solve this problem. So to solve this problem, one thing we should know is that if the length of array steps are taken, we actually come back to the original position. So for example, if we're here and we want to take 5 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we come back to original position. So therefore, to prevent the index from going out of bounds when we are counting the steps, we can do the index that we land to modulo by the length of the array to prevent it from going out of bounds. So let's say when we're here, index 2, we take 5 steps, index 7 modulo 5 is back to index 2. And if you take 5 steps, that is where we will land, the original spot. So what we can do is we can initialize the resulting array with all zeros, and we will iterate through the input array. And to calculate the index we will land at, we will take the nums of index plus the index that we are on, and we will modulo that by the length of nums, and we will set the result of that index to nums of I, and I is what we calculated here. And finally, we want to return the resulting array. So let's go over this example real quick. So first, we're at index 0, add 3, we will be index 3, nums of 3 is 1, so we set this to 1. Index 1 minus 2 will be -1, modulo by 4 would be 3, nums of 3 is 1, set this to 1. Index 2 plus 1 is 3, nums of 3 is 1. Index 3 plus 1 is 4, 4 modulo 4 is 0, nums of 0 is 3, so we set this to 3. And finally, we have come to the end, we can return this as our result. And the time complexity would be O of n, where n is the number of elements in nums, because that's the number of elements we will iterate through. And the space complexity would be O of 1, because the size of this variable will not depend on the nums array, and this doesn't count as space because we are returning it. So now let's get to the coding part. So first, we will initialize the resulting array. And now we will iterate through nums for I in range length of nums. Now we will set index to nums of I plus I modulo by length of nums. And we will set result of I to nums of index. And finally, we want to return the result. See if it works. Okay, perfect. Hope this was helpful. Thank you all for watching. If you have any other questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I hope to see you all again soon.